Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to KRBL Limited's Q4 and FY21 earnings conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Siddharth Rangnekar from CDR India. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Welcome to KRBL Limited's Q4 and FY21 earnings conference call for analysts and investors. I take great pleasure in introducing senior members of the management team on today's call. Joining us are Mr. Anil Kumar Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Anup Kumar Gupta, Joint Managing Director, Ms. Priyanka Mittal, Whole-Time Director and Head International Division, Mr. Ayush Gupta, Head Domestic Division, and Mr. Rakesh Mehrotra, Chief Financial Officer. We propose to commence with updates from Mr. Mehrotra on the overall financial performance, Mr. Ayush Gupta on the domestic business, Ms. Priyanka Mittal with perspectives on exports, and Mr. Anil Kumar Mittal, Chairman, with views on the industry, business and broad strategy. After the opening remarks from the management, the forum would be open for an interactive question and answer session. A cautionary note, certain statements that may be made on today's call could be forward-looking in nature, and actual results could vary from these statements. A detailed statement in this regard is available in KRBL's investor presentation, which is available on the company's website. I would now like to invite Mr. Mehrotra. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Siddharth. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to KRBL's Q4 and FY21 conference call. Trust all of you are safe and well. I hope you have had an opportunity to review our presentation and results which have been uploaded on our website. Let me provide you a brief overview of the financial performance for the quarter. During Q4 FY21, our standalone revenue from operations came in at rupees 974 crore. This was supported by 15% volume growth in sale of rice with healthy volume expansion achieved across exports and domestic business. With a strong brand presence shown by customers, we have improvement in bulk pack volume sales in the period. Similar growth trends were observed in consumer pack volume sales, which turned higher year on year. Our EBITDA during Q4 FY21 stood at rupees 212 crore with EBITDA margin at 21.75%. Gross margins came in at 32.9%. These were higher by 98 basis points year on year, in line with better volume growth. PBT for Q4 FY21 stood at 187 crore. PBT margin in this period is standing at 19.13%. This is 33 basis points better than the year on year basis, owing to cost benefit on inventories and substantially lower finance cost on account of reduced requirement of working capital funding. Our PAT for Q4 FY21 came in at rupees 139 crore and PAT margin at 14.27%, higher by 100 basis points year on year. Moving to performance for the full year FY21, we reported revenue from operations at 3,992 crore, which was backed by consistent growth in export volumes. Domestically, we recorded robust growth year on year basis, general trade and modern trade in consumer pack sales. Gross margin showed 256 basis point year on year growth, increase at 31.5%. EBITDA stood at 846 crore, whereas EBITDA margin showed 133 basis point improvement year on year basis to 21.20%. We achieved a PBT of 751 crore and our PBT margin showed 192 basis points enhancement year on year basis to 18.70%. We have achieved highest ever PAT of 567 crore during the year in line with reduced finance cost. Net profit margin showed a growth of 191 basis points year on year basis at 14%. Our company has very little long-term debt. Most of our debt is typically in the form of working capital loan. We have achieved all-time low net debt position of 147 crore Our net bank debt as on 31st March 2021 stood at as low as 53 crore. Consequently, our leveraging ratio have shown marked improvement. Net debt to EBITDA showed 33 basis point reduction to 0.17 as on 31st March 2021. Interest coverage ratio showed substantial jump to 32.8 times as on March 2021 over 13.2 times as on 31st March 2020. In line with improvement in operating trends in the business, I am pleased to inform that Board of Directors has recommended a dividend at the rate of 350% for the year ended March 2021. Our goal remains the same, to reinvest our accruals in expanding our business, our inventory. We have taken advantage of softer paddy prices by stocking up incremental quantities in order to meet our goals over the next 2-3 years. This gives us a unique base to grow volumes at a pace that we are comfortable with in coming years. Also, the announced increase in MSP for non-basmati price, the industry dynamics will support firmness in the pricing of the basmati, which could enhance our inventory position further. This brings me to the end of my remarks. Before I hand over to the next speaker, I would like to share the company's view on the matter of the ED. The management of company has taken an opinion from independent legal counsel, and on the basis of the same, the view is that since the investigation is still ongoing, no adverse opinion can be drawn. We will not be in a position to respond to queries on this matter on the call, as it is sub judice. KRBL always believes in highest standard of corporate governance and transparency and is determined to take effective steps to restore our esteemed reputation. With that, I hand over to Mr. Ayush Gupta, who will update you on domestic business. Mr. Ayush.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra, and I welcome everyone on the call today. I hope your families and you have been keeping healthy in these tough going times. So good evening, everyone. Whatever I have to say today, I would like to title it as a report card of a resilient organization. Resilient organizations are those that rebound and prosper after business disruption. Because they are resistant to the impacts of disruption, as well as adaptive, agile, and sustainable in the face of disruption. I would like to begin with the key highlights of the results. To put it briefly, our India business showed great restraint during the first half of the financial year, and exemplary performance in the last quarter. Quarter 4 grew by 17.5% in volume terms. Approximately 50% of our top line is contributed by consumer pack, which is all pack sizes of 5 kg and below. This segment was boosted by in-home consumption and posted double-digit growth. This only implies that our brand framework and distribution framework have been fairly resilient during storm. Demand in out-of-home consumption packs, hereby categorized as all pack sizes of 10 kg and above, continued to improve. This channel has gone through grave difficulties during the pandemic. But gradually, on a sequential basis, we are getting back to normalcy. And I do hope we will be back to normal very soon. E-commerce continues to contribute better towards domestic sales, and I will be talking further on how this has really boosted the performance of the company. Being the market leaders in basmati rice space, the company has now strategically forayed into the health food segment with the launch of 2 new nutritionally superior products, India Gate Chia Seeds and India Gate Flax Seeds, along with the existing portfolio of brown rice, brown basmati rice and quinoa. The health segment, though at a very nascent stage, grew at high double digits during the past financial year. India Gate consumer packs, which contributes almost 40% to our business, had a strong performance in the last quarter of the financial year, where India Gate brand grew by more than 20%. During this period, we have added almost 1.5 million households to the consumption basket of this brand. It is important that the resilience of this brand continues as we look forward to lasting normality. The basmati market in India is pegged at 2.5 million ton annually. Through estimates and surveys, we are able to quantify that about 40% of this volume is catered through packaged basmati rice segment. The 60%, which is 1.5 million ton, is still sold in loose unbranded packs. As a category captaincy effort to grow the penetration of packaged basmati rice in the broader basmati rice segment, KRBL has positioned its Unity brand as a brand of choice for the price-conscious customer. While best-in-class product quality and consistency will remain the key pillars of strength, KRBL wishes to tap the market populated by regional and unbranded players of the industry. This 400 rupee crore brand, when nurtured over the years, will prove to be the most important contributor to KRBL's growth story. So if we call ourselves a resilient organization, what are the aspects that make us resilient? There are 5 aspects that I would like to discuss today. They are a decade of market dominance, the consumption opportunity, our growth model, focus on omnichannel, and lastly, consistent media support to our brands. Let me start with talking about our past decade of market dominance. We have had 10 years of volume-led sustainable growth. The India business has shown a robust 300% increase in its top line. The market share of India Gate brand has crawled up to a head-turning 38%. We have a leadership position in our market, and it has been so for the past 10 years. Our persistent and incremental marketing investments have taken our share of voice up to 80%. This simply denotes that we are a long-term oriented company and seek to invest in brands over extended period of time. Moving on, the consumption opportunity. Why KRBL sees for itself a reasonably bright future? There is a study done by Bain & Company, and there are many more done by Kantar and Nielsen and many other consulting firms. It says, while India is a large market in aggregate, the cold reality of India is its relatively low per capita income. As recently as 2005, 69% of India's households were classified as low income. Households with comfortable cushions, what we would call upper middle class or high income, accounted for a mere 7% of the total, giving the income profile an Eiffel Tower-like shape. In the last 15 years, this tower has acquired a prosperous middle. With a steady GDP growth rate of 7.5% a year since this point, today's household income profile pyramid will become a diamond by 2030. And 50% of households will be in the high and upper middle income segment. What this essentially means is that India will add 140 million households in the middle class segment and 20 million households in the high income segment. The consumption story of India will thrive. The consumption of packaged goods, of branded goods, goods with high quality and safety, and good credentials will have an uptake. And that uptake will definitely benefit KRBL. We stand at the base of a mountain of opportunity that is as intriguing as it is exciting. KRBL will have huge opportunities for future growth. The question is not what for future growth. The question merely is when. Next is our growth model. At KRBL, we are undergoing massive renovation. If I have to explain you in a layman's language, renovation is making changes to something that already exists, leaving the essence intact, but giving it new vigor and perhaps a new life. It's like remodeling your kitchen. The basics, counter, dishwasher, refrigerator, wet bar will still be there, but they'll be upgraded. And that's exactly what we're doing at KRBL. While keeping the ethos of the corporate intact, we are upgrading our supply chain, our technology, and most importantly, our people. KRBL is upgrading its supply chain from the current multiple dysfunction stage to an integrated supply chain model. KRBL plans to further extend its supply chain capabilities to regional markets in order to cover geographies in a much more robust manner. We are taking end-to-end digitization of our channel partners. Project Disha, as the word means direction, it is a step towards moving into an open culture to share, learn, grow together. Disha will create a digital interface between KRBL and its distributors. It will completely transform the way our channel partners and sales team have been interacting till now and will strengthen organization's ability for decision making in today's fiercely competitive market. We have been using Salesforce automation software for the past 2 years, and we are very proud to state that our sales team productivity has doubled through this journey. I'm further delighted to share that almost 30% of our general trade business now flows through the Salesforce automation software, and we are further doubling our sales team on the field in order to drive a controlled GTM. Next, the most important pillar of our transformation journey, our people. People are what make an organization, and quality of people is what drives culture. At KRBL, we are building a team of highly experienced top FMCG professionals at various levels of the organization. This input of fresh blood in the KRBL system is helping us overcome resistance to change in a much more welcoming manner. I'm proud to state that we are quickly moving into a productivity-driven work culture. FMCG distribution landscape in India is undergoing huge disruption. This omni-channel landscape is presenting new and better opportunities to increase category penetration in various markets. KRBL is welcoming all channels and developing policies through which we are able to coexist in a mutually beneficial manner. E-commerce has had a solitary story, a story done by many organizations, but at KRBL, we are also proud of it. In financial year 2017, less than 1%, actually 0.3% of the business came from e-commerce, whereas in financial year 2021, it contributes to 4% of our top line. Growth has been a fantastic 13 times. A strong focus on building capabilities and driving everyday great execution has resulted in this performance. As I look back on the performance of the year, I'm very pleased to share that we operate at an undisputed leading market share of 44% and 35% in modern trade and general trade respectively. When there is a crisis, consumers turn towards big brands which have a deep foundation built on decades of trust. We continue to invest in our brands through regular advertising, garnering upwards of 80% share of voice. Our brand messaging remained relevant and contextual, owing to changes in consumer sentiments. These times also required a responsible outlook for the society and a brand with a heart. KRBL contributed more than 50 million meals through the largest food drive campaign during the pandemic. We are aggressive. We will fail to succeed if that is what is needed to succeed. We are an organization with a long-term vision. Our company is all about brand and brand strength. The love, support, trust and commitment our customers have given us is what keeps this company going. We can have our ups and downs as an organization, as a country, as a society. Your company is here to stay in the same resilient, positive, respectful spirit that it has adopted for all these years. Thank you. I would now request Mr. Priyanka Mittal, the whole-time director, to give her remarks on the export side of the business.
Great. Thanks, Ayush. Good evening to everybody. I'd like to start by saying that COVID indeed has been a roller coaster. But I think as an organization, as a sales department, it definitely brought us closer together. When during the last lockdown, the entire support department worked hand in hand with the plant and the distributors to ensure that the supply chain kept on functioning. And since then, we've learned a lot and appreciated our own inherent strength, the strength of our employees, and the fact that we live the values. It was really heartening to see that the higher purpose actually come through. So despite the logistics challenges, we continue to supply. Our distributors, despite lockdowns, continue to operate under great duress. One of our distributors was a mayor, and he just kept his warehouse open. He didn't charge his consumers any money. So that is the ethos on which we built India Gate, and it was heartening to see that our distributors also live that ethos. So overall, a huge learning journey that brought the entire team closer together. With regard to regional update, for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I just wanted to draw out a context on how basmati is exported and which are the key markets. So if you were to look at APIDA data, which actually monitors overall exports, the most dominant market for basmati is Middle East. So over 70% of the total product of India goes to the Middle East, and the rest of the markets, are in low single digits. Whether it's America or Southeast Asia or Africa. So really, the key market for basmati in terms of existing market and potential market remains Middle East. And I'm very happy to inform that we remain the most dominant player in the Middle East from the branded side. India Gate, your brand India Gate is the most dominant brand in the GCC, which is the highest consumer of basmati. We remain number one. And the gap between number two, number three, particularly in certain key markets like UAE, Qatar, are almost halved. Also in a very high density market like Saudi, we remain truly an aspirational brand. And I think as an Indian agri branded product, that's something to be very proud of, that it is consumed by the royalties of the world. Great aspiration value, not only amongst Indian brands, but actually even amongst the local brands. And we saw that highlighted in COVID, where our consumers lined up to fill their baskets with India Gate. And we continue to remain buoyant in that market. We understand the consumer, and we've offered a lot of other caterings to offer to the sort of short-term changes that have occurred in the market. With regard to other markets, America remains a market of key interest. Despite it being, a 4-5% contributor to APIDA, in certain markets in the Americas, particularly in Canada, KRBL's brand India Gate continues to outperform everybody. In terms of aspiration value, we are the most aspirational brand. India Gate Classic is the most expensive brand in the market. And I'm happy to report that in the last year, we've actually gained a lot of important channel customers that have actually deepened and increased that penetration in the market. Also, we saw that happening in America, wherein through just sheer distribution and availability, we opened a lot of new doors. And that is evident in the growth rate that the Americas business experienced. We also launched a lot of new products, which I'll be talking shortly, which are actually received well in the Americas market. With regard to Australasia, this is a market that was built earlier on. We've had over a 15-year leadership in that market. We continue to dominate that region. I'm very happy to report that in almost all mainstream accounts in Australia, we are present, and we are present loudly. In the ethnic market, we continue to maintain our leadership. In the New Zealand market, we are the most highest selling brand in the mainstream as well as the ethnic market. And I think something that is also unique to us vis-a-vis our peers is that we are 100% brand focused. So while others may claim volume share of the market, I'm very happy to report that India Gate is the most dominant leader in that market. The same goes for Africa, and I think that shows our experience in seeding, scaling, and maintaining leadership, right? So we don't just seed grains of growth, but we actually nourish them, flush them, and sustain them. And I think that is evident with our growing market share in markets like Africa. Africa, after experienced challenges on forex remittances, and despite that, our share in the African market on an absolute basis grew. In certain markets, Noor Jahan is now close to 50% market share, which is really heartening because South Africa is a fairly evolved retail market. I think something else to be extremely proud of is India Gate's share in the premium segment. globally, particularly in markets that matter, which is the GCC markets. And, we estimate our share of the premium market to be as high as 86%. And I'm very proud to say that there's probably no other brand that can claim such dominance, especially an Indian brand. In terms of a regional perspective, we continue to open new markets. Of course, that effort proved to be arduous because of logistics constraints on container availability, etc. But we did open a lot of new markets last year. In terms of our strategy going forward, I think it is built on 7 pillars. We want to be relevant and we want to grow our market leaderships in markets that matter, particularly in the GCC market. I'm very happy to report on the value capture that we did this year. So we really set up our house, if I may, for growth in the coming years and in the coming quarters. And what I mean by that was value capture. We operate on a very evolved FMCG model akin to most global FMCG brands in the market. We implemented that model in some of the biggest markets of the GCC, particularly Saudi Arabia. We've seen phenomenal improvement in the availability of our products, and I think it's only a matter of time when we reclaim our market leadership in that market in the white rice segment. Our chairman remains, invested in that market because that's something that he built, and he constantly steers the market through his guidance and through his experience. However, I think it's important to instill the FMCG discipline, and we are going to be seeing some early returns of that investment. We've also looked at our distribution structure, our distribution relationship, and we are looking at adding more distributors to the current pipeline, and that is sort of a widening of the funnel strategy. And we believe that if we truly want to address the market, then markets need to be segmented. We need to have a more focused go-to-market approach, and then partner with distributors who will execute that go-to-market strategy with great finesse and expertise. And so what we've done is we've widened our distribution base. We've looked at HoReCa channel more deeply. We've invested a bit in research, and we are hoping to benefit from that channel also. So unlike other traditional brands which focus primarily on the general trade or the traditional trade, our strategy as a brand has been to focus on modern trade, which outside India is the dominant market channel. So over 70% of the product is sold through that channel, and in the Middle East, there is not a retail channel where we are not present. And I'm very happy to report same is the case in our key markets wherein we exhibit that dominance. So our strategy going forward would actually be to ensure that we consolidate our presence there, to grow on traditional trade, and of course e-commerce, as mentioned by Ayush earlier, that remains an area of increased focus. We saw that last mile connectivity with e-commerce came in very handy during COVID, when due to lockdown, consumers couldn't go to the supermarkets. So brands such as us in the Middle East, who were present through the Amazons and the Noons of the world, were able to do it. Distributors went a step up, went online and scaled their online model, home delivery model. And so there was a lot of new fuse channels which came about, and we'd like to ensure that we remain fully available to capitalize those opportunities. I think targeting and acquiring new customers has been KRBL mantra for a very long time. So while the Indian diaspora continues to drive majority of our consumption, international chef events, the master chefs of the world, and the social media at large are enablers to acquiring new customers. We've seen early seeds of it in Southeast Asia. We've seen seeds of it in Africa, and I'm happy to report definitely in a market we will do really well, which is Canada. So we saw a lot of new customer acquisition, not just Southeast Asian, but I'd have to say starting seeds on sort of the non-traditional consumers. We stepped up our efforts on initiating dialogue with the customer, and I have to say COVID actually propelled that initiative much deeper because you had to be active on the social media. You had to have that human front, and I think just simply relying on traditional media didn't really meet brand objectives. So creating, I think, a brand dialogue and trust became very, very important. We invested in a lot of marketing initiatives. We were on air in Dubai, we were on air in North America, and I think that also helped us in the customer acquisition drive. We also created an entire ecosystem of influencers, chef celebrities, dietitians who could actually educate our customers on buying better. So a lot of the ad wasn't necessarily just about selling India Gate, but it was actually enabling the customer to make a more informed choice. And I think as leaders, bringing customers along the education curve is extremely important. And I think the last pillar, which for me personally has been the most important pillar, has been the pillar of product diversification. We started with Keema, in 2016, and I'm really happy to report that, even though gains have been slow, but we see these fruits of labor, and to see the recognition where people recognize us not just for Basmati, but for the health portfolio is really heartening for me. Last year, we launched 3 new products, despite it being a COVID year. We launched Amaranth, we launched rice bran oil in the market, and again, the positioning there is more of a health premium oil, edible oil. Still early days, but we're very hopeful that with the India Gate brand equity, that we will see success in coming days. In terms of the opportunity, I'd like to talk about, again, from the perspective of markets that matter. So if you were to look at the share of Indian Basmati to the overall rice basket in the Middle East, we are still in about the mid-60s range, I would imagine. And so the upside to convert that, a non-consumer of Basmati into Basmati, remains tremendous. That's one. Second, I think moving the consumer up the pyramid is also a perennial endeavor at KRBL's International Division. We remain very, very focused on pushing the premium end of the market, but at the same time being cognizant that there are mid brands that are entering the market. We have taken timely action to address those mid and value tier. And just as we've maintained our dominance on the premium end, we hope to establish an anchor position in those two categories as well. The future looks buoyant. Yes, indeed, the last quarter was muted. We used that to restructure ourselves internally. But if you look at future, what the future beckons, particularly from the highest per capita consumer of Basmati, as per Ipsos, it's all positive. 57% people are spending more on food and groceries. 57% are preparing their own meals, and overall, I think people have become more conscious on what they consume. And I think with the brand equity that India Gate has, we are well positioned to benefit from that. Along the lines of the massive activity that we entailed in India, I'm happy to report that on the CSR front, we actually did an initiative towards UAE's 10 million meals, wherein we gave away rice. And we believe that if we truly want to be in consumers' heart, it would not be just through pure marketing channels. We would have to be part of society. We would have to be part of giving back, not only in India, but regionally. So that will be an area of focus that we will continue to build on. So with that, thank you for the opportunity. I'll turn it over to the next speaker now.
Good evening, everybody. I hope that everybody is keeping well and safe during the second wave of pandemic. I would like to update you on current dynamics of Basmati business. The COVID pandemic had brought lots of hardship to the trade and industry for the last 14 months. The government had, of course, allowed running of the plants, since ours is the food industry falling under essential commodities. However, we had to face great challenges in procuring empty containers for movement of cargo. Freight rates have increased double-fold, and availability of labor went down by 35%. As a result, day-to-day working got badly impacted, and so also the shipments, especially in the last 3-4 months. Anyhow, with our concerted efforts, we had managed to overcome all these stringent problems, and the yearly results are before you. We now pray that there should not be any third wave and that we should all live, work and stay safe. I would now like to brief you on the new crop. You may be aware that this year Government of India has increased the MSP of non-basmati rice to rupees 1940 per quintal, which is tantamount to a farm income of around rupees 66,000 per acre. To get an equal amount of farm income, and ex-mandi price of 1121 basmati paddy should be around rupees 3600 per quintal. Likewise, 1509 should be priced at about 2,900 rupees per quintal, and 1401 should be around rupees 2850 per quintal. These prices are around 20% higher as compared to previous year prices. Your company has sufficient stock of both paddy and rice, for which we must get a good premium next year. Since majority of our SKUs are 2 years old at the time of sale, we see a good future in the coming year. I would like to add something on the research side I would like to further inform you that Pusa Institute has developed a gene recombination technique by injecting 2 genes of bacterial blight and 2 genes of blast to ensure that the crop is pest resistant, so that there is no need for the farmers to use pesticides such as tricyclazole and carbendazim. As you are aware that pesticide residue issue has become a serious threat for basmati exports, especially in America, Europe countries, which is also being slowly spreading in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. For example, the above 4 genes are injected in 1121 basmati paddy to create a new variety Pusa 1885. Similarly, 4 genes are injected into 1509 to create a new variety Pusa 1985. Similarly, for Pusa number 1, the new variety will be called Pusa 1882. And for 1401, the new variety will be called 1886. The idea is to inculcate the pest resistance traits of the donor varieties and export potent varieties such as 1401, Pusa number 1, 1121, 1509, etc. We are quite confident that this research under the leadership of Dr. A.K. Singh, the director of Pusa Institute, will really bring awesome results, resolving the pesticide residue issue for all times to come. We had been meticulously planning, this is on domestic side, we had been meticulously planning to enter non-basmati segment, especially Govind Bhog from West Bengal, Sona Masuri from Karnataka and Kolam from Maharashtra. However, we could not proceed as per our plans last year due to the pandemic. We are now working on launching these varieties in a big way. These varieties have a similar working pattern as that of basmati, since you have to age them for at least 1 year after arrival of the new crop as to gather their actual attributes and premium quality and pricing. Regarding farmer agitation, we are all watching on media about the farmer agitation, which has certainly not impacted the working of our industry. As a matter of fact, we fail to understand the reason for this agitation. The new agricultural policy is going to increase farm incomes by double-fold, and to help farmers to diversify. Besides, the farmer is under no compulsion to follow the new regulation. The government has further guaranteed to buy the crops on MSP. We thus really fail to understand the reason of this farmer agitation. We feel there is no rationale whatsoever. As far as legislative, state and central regulations are concerned, the government has repealed the Essential Commodities Act. They have also removed VAT/GST on farm produce. The whole country has become rendered as a common market, and thus there is free movement of farm produce from one place to another. There are less obstacles and hindrances. Things are well streamlined and the working environment has become more conducive. However, the state government, in order to increase their revenues, have been making changes in market fees and rural development such which were produced costlier for Indian basmati. I would like to add that basmati rice has put under the category of negative list, hence no incentive has been provided, and even the latest scheme of RoDTEP has been exempted. On GI, lately we are hearing news about the registration of GI for basmati rice in EU. Our stand has always been that basmati rice is grown only in 7 states of North India. Moreover, India was the first for the registration of GI in the EU. Pakistan awakened and came into the picture when the GI of India was about to get registered and started confronting. In case India gets GI registration in EU without Pakistan, then definitely India would be the biggest gainer. Otherwise, if there is a dispute and EU authorities don't agree, that India may go for a joint registration. Let me little bit brief you the background of GI. Originally, the GI for basmati was applied by APIDA, excluding MP. However, Registrar GI directed APIDA to include MP, for which an appeal was filed to IPAB by APIDA, and in the appeal, the direction was issued to GI Registrar to grant GI certificate to basmati rice excluding MP. MP preferred a writ petition against the order of IPAB, and during the pendency of the writ, GI certificate was issued and application to include MP was dismissed by the GI Registrar. The writ petition filed by MP is now dismissed. The MP filed an SLP before the Supreme Court, which is pending. In the meantime, MP has also filed a writ petition against the dismissal of inclusion of MP within the geographical area of cultivation of basmati, also pending before the Madras High Court. About EU markets, there is no doubt that we have lost about 50% share of the EU market to Pakistan due to pesticide residue problem. The buying nations are well aware that our quality and yields parameters are better and our milling standards are superior. Yet there is no denying the fact that the pesticide residue issue had affected our position drastically, and we had lost about 50% of our market share of brown basmati rice. We are working hard on the pesticide issue, and it will take about 1 year to recapture this lost market share. The industry, farmers, farming community and the government are all working in tandem to resolve this issue. We are confident that this problem will be solved for all times to come very soon. Regarding Iran, India has really lost a big share of its market in Iran due to payment problems. There are no imports of crude, including fertilizer and petrochemical health, resulting into absorption of INR reserves with the Indian banks. Though still some quantities are being routed through third countries, we are confident that import of crude will be allowed by India from Iran, and hence the rice import should resume as before. Till the time the payment problems are not resolved, the business will be subdued. The newly developed China market came into Indian market for the first time in October 2020. There has been a big export to China of broken rice, and this is our opinion, it will continue. There is a very minuscule quantities of basmati and superfine varieties going to China, that too via Hong Kong. As you have heard just now, Our younger generation is quite active in business and is playing dynamic role in our export as well as domestic operation. With their energetic involvement coupled with our long experience, I see a bright future ahead in the coming years. Thanking all the investors once again, I hand over the call to moderator to take the discussion forward.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Participants, please restrict to 2 questions per participant. If time permits, please come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and one to ask a question. The first question is from the line of Varun Goenka from Nippon India Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, everybody, and thank you for a very good comprehensive presentation. And Ayush and Sankaji very comprehensively addressed very exhaustive opening remarks. So I think operationally or brand-wise or distribution, manufacturing, nobody can beat us. We are clear leaders, and not even MNCs can challenge in your turf. But my question is, in terms of KRBL corporate brand or legacy, what are the efforts that we are making towards improving that, the board, the capital allocation, etc.? I think most other participants have been talking in this line. Otherwise, we've been doing great. Yeah. Apart from Anilji and Anuj, would be also eager to hear Priyanka and Ayush.
Varun, your question are twofold. One is capital allocation and one is about the board. There are 2 questions, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, for example, something as simple as that, well, other participants were asking in the previous calls, dividend to be converted to buyback or additional buyback, because the kind of brand that India Gate is, we are clearly underappreciated by the capital market.
Yeah, Varun, you see, today for practically 6-7 months, we are a debt-free company, as our dependency on banks have reduced too much. Even today, we have the capacity to reach the present top line without taking any loans from the banks. In the history of last 26 years, KRBL has always gained due to inventory position.
Right.
This year also, we hold highest inventory in the industry at the lowest price. Just to inform you, and you can note it down also, we have paddy 3,41,000 tons, priced at 27,374 per metric ton. We have rice 4,45,000 tons at a price of 42,920 per metric ton. This is total valuing at 2,841 crores. So it is our great benefit to hold surplus cash in the balance sheet for the company. Going forward, as Anilji said, with the increase of procurement of basmati paddy and regional non-basmati business, where aging is required, liquidity plays a vital role.
Right.
As far as your question about buyback and converting dividend into buyback, I tell you this is still pending in the board and nothing has been materialized. The matter is in the pipeline. We'll let you know whenever it is materialized.
Sure. My second question being, in terms of our brand, the size of the brand that we are, I still feel our margins are materially lower versus other FMCG companies. So maybe because we are over-dependent on the wholesale channel for distribution. So is there any thought to increase gradually the net realization to us by going directly to consumers, or disintermediating as much going forward, directly selling at e-commerce, something like that?
Yeah, Priyanka will answer you.
So thank you. Good evening, Varunji. Lovely to connect with you again. With regard to, this thing of using wholesale as a channel, I think on the export market that's not true. We actually use a distribution-led model, and unlike others that just trade with the distributors, with most of the distributors, we have a fixed markup arrangement, which is capped. So their markup is capped, and then we have distribution drive KPIs with them, which we monitor on a monthly basis. Earlier we were monitoring on a quarterly basis, now we monitor on a monthly basis. So in terms of your question on realizations being low, I think I alluded to it in my presentation, and without being very specific, on this call, for competition reasons, I can tell you that our unit value realization is amongst the highest of any commodity in the world. If you were to just compare it to a PIDA realization of basmati on export, and you were to compare it with my export realization, I would imagine that it's going to be a 60% premium over what the industry realizes. So that is a pure aspect of branding and premium positioning. And that's on the export side. If Ayush would like to comment on the domestic side with regard to premiumization, Ayush, over to you.
Yeah. So good evening, Varun, and thanks for that question. I think we had a brief chat on this earlier as well, where we say that domestic realizes almost 65% of its MRPs on its product. And we spoke about companies realizing over 90%. We are still a long way to go in that direction, at that number. But we are really working on our supply chain. We are really working on opening regional distribution centers where we reach directly to our retailers or e-com players, and that brings in a lot more efficiency and cost saving as well. And our objective really, I would not be able to quantify as such, but from that 65% number, I think we should be moving up considerably in just a matter of a year or two, because we've put exclusive resources on that front, and we are looking at business from a supply chain cost perspective. And also to add a little bit on the corporate PR front, more than corporate PR, I feel that I spoke about renovation in my statement. I think when change happens from a foundational aspect, it will eventually show to all of us. PR really will be a newspaper test to what we have done so far, and it's not a 6-month or a 3-month job that PR can turn things around. We all know what KRBL is, what it has gone through. So it's a journey. It's a journey. So we are all moving in the right direction. We are transforming in the right manner, and it will eventually show up. That's what I believe.
Come back more.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Mr. Chetan Doshi from Tulsi Capital Market Limited. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My question is any sale carried forward due to this non-availability of labor and second wave of COVID from March ending to the current quarter? And the second question is, what are your plans to increase shareholders' value? Because see, from I think last 10 years, if you see, our profit has gone up from say 100 crores to 560 crores. But if you see in last 3 years, the shareholders' value has depreciated. So when we say in terms of leadership, it is not getting reflected, on the shareholders' value. So please, your comments on this.
As far as carry forward of sales is concerned, there is no much which is carried forward. So we are normally, what has been carried forward, it is normal in the business. As far as the question of creating value for the shareholder, you know what is happening from last 3 years on the legal structure, which I will not like to comment, but market has really discounted that thing. You also know 3 years back we were at 670 rupees and today we are at 240, 250, whatever. So market has discounted that not because of the business, because of some legal issues. And I think the worst has happened. Everything now is going to be on the positive side only. The worst has happened and market has discounted with the full flow. The market have discounted my share price. Now I think everything has been done well and we are very positive in the future. Thank you.
But what are your plans to increase the shareholders' value? See, suppose today you are giving 350% dividend. We have generated enough reserves. Even if we double the dividend, then also it's not going to affect your balance sheet or the cash flow. So, we should be generous because see, this type of profit in the history of KRPL, it is a big achievement. And I congratulate the entire team for this. So you have to be little liberal to get attention, and take care of the shareholders who have been associated with you for so long.
Yes, you are directly or indirectly talking about buyback, which I have answered in the Varun question. And why I require surplus cash. We are dealing in a commodity where aging is the key. And aging not to the tune of just 1 year. It is to the tune of two years. And when we sell the product after 2 years, it goes up to 3 years. So working capital requirement is the key in this business. If you compare Basmati rices balance sheets of our peers, the biggest strength what KRPL is today is our balance sheet. And that is because of the cash strength. Today, if I am able to give the margin to my bank on my stock at the rate of 60%, where others are giving 10% margin, then you see my interest borrowing rate is cut by 200 basis points. My average borrowing last year was 4% per annum. And you see the balance sheet of other peers or anybody in the industry. It is not less than 6-7%. So these are the benefits because of the liquidity which is coming in the balance sheet. And going forward, where we are talking a top line of 8,000 crore in next 4-5 years, we need that liquidity. And aging is the key in the industry. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you very much. We move on to the next participant. The next question is from the line of Abhishek from Skyridge Wealth Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for taking my question and congratulations on good operational performance. So I wanted to know about your capacity utilization. Obviously, you have a very large processing plant, and I wanted to know how much scalability do you have from here without expending too much on capex front?
Yeah, you see, Dhuri, which is in Punjab, that is the largest plant in the world where we have a capacity to mill about 140 metric ton per hour. In other words, we have 1 million ton. 1 million ton capacity per annum. Today we are at 45% capacity utilization at Dhuri plant, and in our Gazia plant we have 90 plus capacity utilization. As far as Dhuri plant is concerned, I am saying from last 3-4 years, to reach a turnover of 8,000 crore, we don't need any capital expenditure as we have a sufficient capacity to mill the paddy and rice. Maybe we will be requiring some 150 crores for more warehousing. Otherwise, there is no capital requirement for increasing the revenue of the company twofold.
Okay, sir. That's good to know. Sir, and my second question is regarding your realizations. So as we understand that the realizations took a major hit during last year. So are we seeing some pickup there or, are we still trading low only?
I think investors have taken not rightly the realization. I tell you, as far as volumes are concerned, our total volume has increased by 1% as compared to last year. Number two, cost of goods sold, COGS, is reduced by 17% over to last year. And our realization is reduced by 12%. You see, COGS is reduced by 17% and our revenue realization is reduced by 12% as compared to the previous year. So this loss is only due to the less realization is due to the inventory, because the inventory was cheap. And for certain SKUs, we have to pass that benefit to the consumer, because low price SKUs are quite market sensitive. We have to pass on the price to the consumer. And number two, the realization of non-basmati export, if you see, it has been reduced by 40% as compared to last year. This is due to the export to China, wherein 100% broken is exported. Whereas basmati export is concerned, the downfall is only 5%, and in domestic it is 10%. So mainly the less realization is due to China, where 100% broken or less value product is being exported. And despite of less value realization and less revenue, the EBITDA has increased by 130 basis point and net profit has increased by 188 basis point. This is the highest ever profit by KRBL.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. That's it from mine. Thank you for clearing my queries. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mr. Jigar Walia from OHM Group. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and congrats for the numbers. So my first question is a clarification. With regards to our roughly 1800 crore India business, did I hear correctly that 50% is consumer packs, so which is 10 kgs and below, so which would be roughly 900 CR. How much of this would be e-com? E-com, I believe, would be largely consumer packs. If you can help understand this.
Ayush will answer.
Yeah. So as I said, 50% of consumer pack is contributed to our top line. E-com business, I mentioned 4% of our top line is contributed through e-com business.
Understood. So with the balance of wholesale which is there, which is 10 kgs and above, and within that, there is a mention in the presentation that Unity is a 400 CR brand. But 400 CR would be at the brand level. Probably at the company level, what could be the Unity value out of this balance 900? And would this largely be you categorize as Horeca, or Horeca is mapped separately?
No.
Is entire 10 kgs and above kind of mapped as Horeca? Yeah.
I tell you about Unity brand. It is basically, till time, it is a Horeca brand. Out of 400 crore, 325 crore is Horeca. And it is a very famous brand as far as biryani is concerned. In South, if you go, any biryani house, if it's selling good biryani, is using Unity. What we are saying that we have converted this brand into a consumer brand as well. And we hope to achieve 1,000 crore in next 2 years, 3 years maximum. And there are about 20 SKUs of consumer brand which we have launched in the name of Unity, which are quite cheaper to India Gate and quite affordable to the middle class or a lower middle class or a upper middle class people.
Understood. So that would be outside of the wholesale pack. So this entire Unity number that we'll be sharing would be outside of the wholesale or the Horeca.
No, so just this 400 crore includes Horeca, but what I'm talking an increment of 500 crore in this crore
will go to 1,000 crore or 500. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, can you help us understand on a full year basis what has been our market share change in the key markets, India, Middle East, maybe even USA or other, if you know.
Priyanka will answer.
So with regard to the Middle East, we continue to remain, like I said, dominant market leader in the GCC countries. So in UAE, we continue to be the number one brand in UAE. Same in Qatar, same in Kuwait. In Oman, based on EPOS data of retailers, we can also gather that we are the number one brand because AC Nielsen does not track that region. And in Bahrain also, based on EPOS, we can gather that we are number one. Again, AC Nielsen does not track. From a Saudi perspective, in the white rice category, we are definitely the second biggest player of the category mentioned on the call. Definitely huge room to grow in Saudi, and we shall see that unfold. In terms of USA, we don't subscribe to Nielsen, so I would not be able to give you, a Nielsen specific number. In Australia, New Zealand, also we get data from mainstream retailers as well as we do a retail traditional market share of shelf study, and we can confidently say that we are number one, a dominant number one in Australia as well as New Zealand. We also enjoy leadership in other markets, as is evident in the deck. We are the number one brand with our brand Noor Jahan in South Africa. We are number one in Fiji. We are number one. So in certain northern African markets, again, we enjoy a dominant position.
Good. Thanks, Priyanka ma'am. Basically, I was looking at market share change. I understand we are number one in most of these markets, but more in terms of the market share change. And even within India, when we look at 38% market share, this is within the consumer thing or the overall 1800 club level?
Yeah. So, the 38% market share that you talk about India, the bulk market of India is quite unorganized and Nielsen doesn't capture doesn't capture the 25 kg bags in its report, but the Nielsen report captures up to 10 kg in its report. So the 38% market share is pertaining to all packs 10 kg and below.
Got it. And within the other markets that Priyanka ma'am explained, there is a positive market share growth for each of the markets or any noteworthy changes in the market share that you can highlight?
So from an FY perspective, I can tell you that we've retained our market share position in almost all of the markets. We did not subscribe last year, so I cannot tell you from an FY perspective. But what I can tell you is that we continue to maintain our leadership position.
Understood. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I request all the participants, please restrict to 2 questions per participant. If time permit, please come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Mr. Gurpreet Singh from GA Capital Management. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Gurpreet Singh, may I request you to speak a little louder?
Hello. Are you able?
Sir, we are losing your audio. May I request you to speak over the handset?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening. Gurpreet Singh from GA Capital. Good to see Priyanka and Ayush on the call. Anupji, my question is to you. 2 years back, May 2019, you had indicated that you will be targeting a turnover of something like 8,000 crores in 5 years. So I just want to understand, are we on the target in next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, Gurpreet, good evening. You see, we have shifted that plan of 8,000 crores from last year to now because last 1 year and 1.5 years has gone, you know the reason. And I'm saying from now, it can be even from the third wave, I don't know. So from last 2-3 years, we are achieving basmati rice sale to the tune of 5,65,000 tons to 6,10,000 tons annually, which is practically 9 to 9.5% of basmati production in India. With the help of marketing initiative, both in domestic and exports, as told by Ayush and Priyanka, we would like to increase this by 50 basis points each year and to reach at least 12.5% at the end of 5 years. In revenue terms, it will add extra revenue of 1,500 crores if I reach to 12.5% of India's production. Number 2, our plans are for having processing, packaging and warehousing units in Karnataka, West Bengal and Maharashtra as told by Anilji. This will give a boost to the sales of premium regional rice requiring aging as in basmati rice. This will add another 800 crore to the revenue. Number 3, we will be exporting non-basmati rice, this premium segment, to different parts of the world with our premium brands. This will add another 500 crore to the kitty. Number 4, health segment, which is today at 20-25 crore, should go up to 500 crore in next 5 years. And there are a lot of products in pipeline relating to this segment. If you total all these, it will come to around 3,500 crore, and we are practically at 4,500 crore, which makes it 8,000 crore. This is our program to do in next 1 or 2 years, as far as capital investment is concerned.
You mean to say in next 3 to 4 years you'll be able to achieve this, is it?
Yeah, I said 4 to 5 years, but 1 year has already been wasted, so I should say from now.
Okay. And secondly, I just want to ask you, are you conserving cash? Do you have any acquisition in your mind?
I told you previously also to Varun also, liquidity is the key for a basmati exporter. Even for non-basmati, which are trying for aging, liquidity is the key. We would not like to spoil that thing. But definitely, what I said regarding buyback or other things, that is in the pipeline, and we'll let you know whenever it is materialized.
No, I'm not talking about buyback. I'm talking about any acquisition any corporate acquisition.
We are open to it, Jaspreet. Any opportunity comes and we have cash, lot of cash in the books, so why not?
Okay. Are your banking limits affected due to this ongoing cases, or would you be trying to rely less on the banks going forward?
No, limits are not at all affected, but we don't want too much dependent on the bank. If you say as on date, Jaspreet, we have got around 400 crore lying in the bank. So there is no question of borrowing. So dependency on the bank is really too much, and as I told you previously also, today if I don't borrow, I can manage my top line.
Okay. It will not affect you during the peak season, is it?
Peak season also, and while negotiating with the banks, we get minimum benefit of 200 to 250 basis points. When we say we will give a margin of 60% on the stocks, naturally the interest rate goes down.
Okay, but the limits are not affected. This is what you are telling me.
Not at all. They are all in place.
Okay. My last question is, due to this Iran market, the problem which is going on, do you feel there is a glut in the market, Indian market, or next year also will face a similar kind of a glut?
Anil would like to answer.
Jaspreet, actually, if Iran business would have continued, the market price what are today of basmati rice would have jumped up by minimum 10 to 15 rupees a kilo. These prices could not jump to that level because the demand from Iran was subdued. And still, I'm not saying it is not going. Let us say we exported 1.4 million ton in ending 2021. It came down to around 1.1 million, and this year the way it is going, it is coming down. And that is the reason, looking to the crop, looking to the prices. But I am quite confident, because their staple food is basmati rice. The Indian government and Iranian government both are desperately trying to find out a via media whereby they can import Indian basmati rice.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Mr. Himanshu Upadhyay from PGIM India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, congratulations. And I really appreciate the openness with which you replied to questions of the investors. My first question was, if we see or what we are hearing about inflation, okay, and many food products also, the inflation is quite high. So will it be significantly beneficial to us, means over next 1 or 2 years, if the price of food products increase, because we generally have a 2 years inventory? So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. You see, today, as on 31st March, I had a roughly 2,900 crore inventory. And basically, the price was 27,000 rupees a ton of paddy. And today, we are expecting the new crop at mandi level to be around 34,000 rupees a ton. So already there is a gain of at least 20-25% on the inventory which we are holding. This is my expectation, because Government of India, as Mr. Mittal has told already, that has increased the MSP of non-basmati rice to 1,940 rupees a quintal, which in turn gives to the farmer 66,000 rupees an acre. So if farmer has to grow basmati, he should get minimum 66,000 rupees, otherwise he will stop growing basmati. So it is in the interest of the basmati milling community, exporting community, that farmer should always grow basmati and he should get a good price. When farmer will get a good price, definitely the price to the consumer will also go up. And basmati eating consumer, especially the premium quality, if the price goes up by 15-20%, really it doesn't matter. So it is always profitable. Your question is, it is always profitable for a company like KRBL who are holding huge stocks. Any type of inflation will always benefit us. Thank you.
Okay. And what we also hear, and last year also you stated that the price of paddy were very low, or basmati, and hence you wanted to accumulate as much as you can get in the market. And what we hear from farmer community, especially in some states, that the paddy sowing will be lesser this year on basmati. Is it the case, or what is your sense?
As far as stock is concerned, and what I told you last year, we are holding stocks all-time high as far as history of KRBL is concerned, because we find the price is too low.
No, my question was that sowing of this year's paddy or basmati, how is it?
Yeah, sowing because this MSP, where farmer is getting 66,000, we are expecting a downfall of minimum 15% in the crop this year.
Okay. And one last thing, you said about the new varieties of rice where some pesticides may not be required, okay? So how quick can the adoption of that be, and how successful are that? And one more thing, so when the farmer tries a new basmati or any crop, so do you think that he will start with the whole crop, or it would be in small portions, and the scaling up will take how much time? So just some thoughts of yours. And can it be as quick as Pusa 1121, where we did a lot of work and we benefited also? So what new varieties are coming where some of these pesticide may not be required? So how soon can be the adoption of the new varieties?
Let me tell you, whenever a research is done, it is not overnight. They do the research for 3 years, 4 years before they prepare commercial samples. And we are one of the most luckiest company that we are so much associated with Pusa Institute. If you recall, that 1121, they gave to KRBL the first 1 kilo seed, which is multi to 5 million tons today. Similarly, they gave us 1509. Similarly, what I mentioned you today was that they have prepared a commercial crop. They sent us the sample. They sent us 16 samples, out of which we cleared only 6 samples, that they are good in cooking, good in taste. And now the commercial production will start, the seed production will start this year, and commercial production will start next year. It will not come this year, it will come next, because we have already given our approval, and they have received the approval from 10 very promising farmers also. So I think so this year it will go into seed multiplication.
So sizable thing will be something in FY24 type of thing, means the sizable bulk of the...
Yes, it will come in FY22 crop. FY22, it will come in October, November 22.
But that would be majorly seed, means for the next season. It won't be that big, na, 1 million ton or...
No, but I tell you, na, see, already we are doing pesticide control. So already we will receive this year quite a good big chunk where it is approved by the European Union for pesticide-free rice. Already that we are working. And as far as institute is concerned, the crop will start coming, commercial crop, by end of during October 22.
22 में तो seed आएगा ना?
Seed आएगा तो 23. You are right, 23. Yeah,
okay.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. I'll join back in the queue for further queries.
23.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Mr. Sarvesh Gupta from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir, and thanks a lot for taking
Sarvesh, sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak a bit louder? You're not audible.
Yeah, good evening, sir. First question, sir. Last 2-3 years, growth-wise, we haven't been able to do much. So what gives you confidence on this 8,000 crore sort of a target, which has also been postponed? That means like you're talking about 13-14% growth. But last 2-3 years does not give us any confidence that, the company can sustainably grow at 14%, assuming no commodity price hike. What are the drivers of a 14-15% growth rate compared to what we have achieved in the last 2-3 years?
Okay. Good question. You see, I've already told our plans what are hit due to COVID, especially the plan to put processing, packaging and warehousing in the south districts in the West Bengal. It got a big hit and it was delayed by a year, or maybe it may go after third wave. And Basmati is concerned, yeah, COVID is one of the reasons, but now we are increasing, and as I told, today we have a share of 9.5% of the annual production of Basmati in India. We are planning to touch 12.5% in the 4-5 years. And health segment is also going up, and non-Basmati to the export sector will also go up. So all this combined together, we are confident that in next 5 years we'll reach 8,000 crores.
But you may plan for anything, but what are you getting from the market that 10% will increase to 12.5%? You can plan for 15% also, 20% also. But are there any clear quantitative signals that you are getting from the market which develops confidence that you will be able to achieve your plan?
Let me answer. Yeah. See, you have to understand the dynamics of rice. Every year, about 10% there is an increase in MSP. So MSP of non-Basmati will increase. If the MSP increases, this commodity of Basmati has to proportionately increase. Otherwise, farmer will not have interest to grow Basmati over Parmal. Next year again it will be, this year it is 66,000, next year it will be 75,000 or 80,000. Now with 66,000 earning, every farmer would like that who grows Basmati, that at least I should get instead of 66, 68 or 70,000 per acre. And let us forget 70,000, if he wants to get 66,000 rupees, the price of Basmati next year should be minimum 34,000, 35,000. So 20% there would be increase in the pricing. That is part number one. Part number two, Mr. Anup has already communicated to you that there is, see in India, what is the consumption of Basmati? It is 2.2 million, 2.4 million tons. Whereas non-Basmati consumption in India is about 88 to 90 million tons. Out of 90 million tons, there is about 15 to 18 million tons is specialty rice, which is known as Govind Bhog, Sona Masuri, and all these rices. If we are able, we are going to enter in these lines. We are not going to do a business of 50, 100 or 1,000 tons. These business who have got a market already in India for about 20 million ton or 25 million ton compared to Basmati of 2.5 million ton, we are going to get the revenues from these three SKUs, number one. Number two, we are at a very nascent stage as far as health segment is concerned. Anupji told today it might be at 20 crore or 40 crore in next 5 years. We want to take this segment to at least 300-400 crore rupees minimum. So people plan and we have to take action. Our actions are delayed because of COVID. He told you, we can plan the action. If we do not plan our action and we do not reach to 8,000 ton, how we are going to create a confidence in the consumer, in the investor?
Understood, sir. So the second question is on the share acquisition, sir. Last 2 years back, I think the promoters were buying from the market at approximately maybe the similar prices, right? Now, as Mr. Anupji mentioned earlier that, market has discounted us very badly because of all the legal issues. So in the midst of this, I think it would make a lot of sense if the promoters, if you feel that this is the bottom and this is the worst, all worst has happened, then why should promoters not come and show confidence in their own stock price by buying it from the open market when 2 years back also we were buying at the same price. Now, of course, it is more attractive compared to what it was 2 years back. So I think, some action should be taken along with the buyback, as anyways many participants have mentioned. I think we should move in that direction pretty quickly, sir.
Yeah, we have taken your suggestion. We'll look into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anuj Sharma from M3 Investment. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. My question is, when you talk about non-rice brands like quinoa and flex seeds, what are the key variables you look at before deciding to enter a new segment, and what is the scalability you minimum wish to achieve in these two segments?
Your voice is blaring. Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, Is it better now?
No, sir, still not better. May I request you to speak over the handset?
Yeah, I am over the handset. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just referring to when we are looking at non-rice brands like quinoa or flex seeds or other segments which we are planning to enter, what are the key variables we look at before entering a new segment, and what is the scalability we look at before we decide that we plan to enter a new segment? Thank you.
So health, I'll share our learnings over the last 6 years, when we first entered with quinoa. And with quinoa, the aspiration was, if you look at it from a pallet position, so, about 30% of the pallet is starches, right, carbohydrates. And so rice becomes that 30% contributor. The next pallet contributor is 22% protein. And we wanted to participate in that. But as a family, we would never ever participate in animal protein. So quinoa was a farmer-friendly option because for us, parameters are two. One, it needs to realize a higher to a farmer. And the second is it needs to net out to a consumer and it needs to provide health benefits. So for us, we keep these two stakeholders in mind. So we looked at quinoa. The third was, of course, rice bran oil, which is, so 7% of the pallet is fats, and now through rice bran oil, we've done that. When we look at GTM for each product, we look at, of course, ROS, rate of sale. We look at adjacencies to the core brand. So for us, the anchor is quinoa. We will look at ROS of the adjacencies, and we would look at the farmer scalability, right? So from an India perspective, because all of the products that we are doing are India-led, right? So what are the superfoods that India is growing which we can market abroad, and that becomes the driver for introducing those categories. Ayush, do you want to add anything on the domestic side?
Yeah. So, for domestic, what we look primarily when introducing health category, firstly is the change in consumption pattern that we are seeing over the years. Also, the evolving channels, modern trade and e-commerce, they were not so prominent as it has become now a couple of years back. So it makes us much more easier and consumer friendly to promote these, products in the market, in the Indian market. More so, when we look at product expansions in domestic, there are two broad categories. One I would categorize as high margin value-added products, and second would be driving the top line, at a compromisable margin. So, all the health range of products really fall in the high margin segment, which really contributes handsomely to our bottom line. Whereas we are also looking at non-basmati variants to grow our top line. So that's the mix, and that's how we look at, in terms of the future.
Sure. Just two questions in link to that. One is, what is minimum scale you want to achieve in each of these segments? And second is, based on these parameters, how many products would you have in pipeline which you want to aspire or maybe seed in the market in the next 3-5 years? Thank you.
So in the export market, because the base is really small, for some categories, we are growing 100%. And also we are seeing that because of pandemic, there are some shoot up in demand. From a long-term projection, we look at normalizing those short-term spikes. In terms of pipeline, I think we already have a very rich pipeline. Again, building on the adjacencies, I think it's too early to comment really what is going to go to market, because from lab to commerce, there's a lot of consumer insight and research that goes. So while the pipeline might have, let's say, 20 products, only 4 might actually make it to the market. So the pipeline, I can tell you, is very rich. The other thing I think which is very unique is we are very market focused. So it's not necessarily that any new NPD will be launched in India as well as globally. So there might be some markets which would find itself amenable to certain markets, and we would therefore sell them. For domestic, the pipeline might be completely different. And I think there it is consumer-led and consumer acceptance-based, which I think is driving our NPD strategy.
All right. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mr. VP Rajesh from Banyan Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. My question was regarding the US market. I know you mentioned that you don't subscribe to the database over there, but if you can just give your sense of what is our strategy in that market, and what is our current market position there?
So, in terms of APIDA data, APIDA does not make any distinction between private label and branded business. And clearly there is, so I can say so from a retail perspective, there is on the ethnic market side, there is a peer group that appears present, but on the ethnic market, in certain markets we are at par, and in certain markets we are a very, very strong number 2 brand. On the mainstream side, I'm happy to inform that on the Midwest modern chains, we are present, we are visible, and we are in fact more dominant than. But in terms of the opportunity to grow, I would imagine that would come from the club business, it would come from the modern trade formats. Those are definitely opportunities that the company is working towards.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sailesh. Please go ahead. Sailesh, may I request you to unmute your line from your side and go ahead with the question. Due to no response, we move on to the next participant. The next question is from the line of Ekta Sangvi from Valum Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Most of my questions have been answered, but could you give me a brand-wise breakup of the brands?
No, this is a confidential data we never share with anybody. Sorry, I cannot share.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mr. Shailesh Kumar, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. First, I would like to congratulate the company and management for extraordinary resilience that they have shown in this extraordinary time. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the compliance department of the company for timely disclosure about various events that has taken place. Now, coming to the questions, I have got two questions for the management. First thing is, though times were extraordinary, our closest competitor has grown the top line by almost 35%, both domestically as well as internationally. International business has grown by 45%, domestic has 16%, while our international business has grown by around 11% and domestic by around 13% sort of thing. So, what is the thought process? What is management explanation? Second question. KRBL has always projected itself as a consumer brand, FMCG kind of company. But when I look at the manpower expense of KRBL, it is around 2.2% of the turnover. While when we look at the comparable companies like Dabur, Marico, it is around 10.5% of the sales, 7% of the sales. Even our closer competitor is spending 5.6% of the turnover on manpower. In this competitive environment, quality of manpower is very important. So, what is the thought process of management? Thank you.
Yeah. Your number one question where you are comparing our top lines with, I think you are comparing with Daawat or so. I tell you, if I want to increase top line with the private label shipping vessels, he's shipping soybean meal. He's shipping so many products which are not branded, which doesn't have any, the margin expansion is also not there. Today, KRBL is a company where our top line constitutes 80-85% of our own brands. What is the reason of EBITDA of LT and EBITDA of KRBL? My margin is 31.5%. What is his margin? Because my total top line is branded. And your number two question about the manpower, I thought you must have heard Ayush and Priyanka. We are in a revamp and we are in last 60 days only 110 people are hired in the export market as well as domestic market.
Combined.
It's a combined export and domestic market. So we are revamping our total. You rightly said my expense is just 2.2%. It will go up, and you will see in next 2-3 years it will go up, and my manpower strength will go up tremendously.
Premium positioning also.
And Priyanka would also like to add something.
Premium positioning. So I think the third point is when you compare us to our peers, and without getting very specific, I think KRBL's strength is India Gate's premium positioning.
Yeah.
And with premium positioning, you get the pricing power, and you don't want to necessarily discount the product to gain value. And for that reason, we have the mid-segment brands and value brands that help us achieve those objectives, and you modulate that mix. So I think, while not wanting to comment what our peers are doing because each company has its own strategy, our strategy has been not to discount our premium brands, to continue to deepen the penetration of those brands and fight out those players which are sort of driving the market down through deep cut promotions or excessive blending, to introduce new brands and fight that competition. And that's a fight that we continue to fight every day, being in the commodity that we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Mr. Varun Goenka from Nippon India Asset Management. Please go ahead. Varun Gunka, may I request you to unmute your line from your side and go ahead with your question?
Yes, is my voice audible?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity again, and thank you, Anuj, for clarifying in detail the roadmap to 8,000 crores top line or such. My question is on domestic side. We're obviously champions in Basmati, and now we're trying to build a non-Basmati franchise too. So when we go to the dealer, how do we get more wallet share of the dealer? Are we also looking to create adjacencies like I think apne try kar rahe the idli, the idli batter. Maybe other things are also getting branded, salt and sugar, etc. So eventually, will India Gate build those adjacencies so that we can, build our wallet share from the dealer more and more? Or does it make sense to remain absolutely focused on our rice, which is our core?
So, Varunji, I'd like to take that, even though the question is directed to Ayush, because, we've had internal discussion on it. And India Gate, from a positioning standpoint, stands for premium. It stands for value, it stands for a certain brand promise. India Gate has a brand has certain attributes and aura, personality. Now, from that perspective, it distinguishes itself in the Basmati, and the moment we try to use that brand and leverage it to other, and I think certain other players who might be dominant in certain commodities such as edible oil have tried to line extend the brand to other commodities, they've not truly succeeded. So whether it's an edible oil player venturing into Basmati with the same brand name, or an atta player venturing, if you see it play out in the market, there's not been a clear, because the consumer perceives that edible oil brand as a champion of that category. So I think even if we do venture into, let's say, other commodity categories, for me, the primary driver would be through my entry, am I enriching the category? Am I creating better value for the consumers? Am I delivering better value to the trade? Because gone the days to be another Me Too player in the market. It's too expensive and too crowded. That's number one. Then looking to that, we've actually gotten into category creation with the health product. So I think from an aspiration, we'd like to play at the premium end of the market with India Gate, push the value up and take the share of wallet on the premium side. If we do want to play on the other commodity side, we would most likely launch other brands and then champion them through investment.
Perfectly answered, yeah. My other question is on the export side only. So today, if I see the EPEDA data, around 35,000 crores of Basmati is exported. And KRBL's market share has risen from some 2% or to 7-8% today. But that's still meaningful opportunity for us. So during this last 18 months of chaos, have you seen any kind of market structure change, any weaker player going out of the industry or any brand going out of the market, which can help us gain even more dominance from 7% market share to maybe much higher? Because the industry itself in the Middle East is not growing, maybe 3%, 4%.
Right. So from a GCC perspective, I think like the strategy of domestic, wherein we have built a secondary brand called Unity. At KRBL, our ambition is to build a secondary brand, Noor Jahan, in that market. We've already achieved success in markets like Qatar, where we are the second. We are presumably number 2 in the Qatar market with Noor Jahan. We've launched this product in the region. We've achieved, I would say, moderate success with that. So the idea would be to gain incremental share through addition of newer brands which are positioned at different products. So that's one. In terms of people going out, Varunji, this is the dynamics of the industry. I can tell you, brands come into the market every day. They have a certain lifespan and then they sort of fade out. It will be very boastful of me to say, brands go out and in. That's the nature of the commodity. Our goal is to identify the opportunities and try to capitalize them and grow them. So there are short-term opportunities and long-term opportunities. The other thing that we are working on is working on the food service side of the business. So we're bringing a lot of structure and scalability and approaching the food service business also through a portfolio of brands. So those are sort of opportunities which we are capitalizing on in a more structured manner.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ashwani Maheshwari from India Resurgence Fund. Please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. So good evening, everyone. So two questions from my side. First is regarding your revenues. So as you earlier told that your volumes have gone up by around 11% over the year, by more than 10%. But if you look at the revenues in amount, in rupees terms, then basically they have gone down by more than 10% year on year for 12 months. So, what is the basic reason for that? Secondly, if we look at the ethanol fuel policy of the Indian government, so they have recently launched a document in which they have said that apart from sugarcane, they are also looking at other crops, other grains, including rice, for their raw material towards this particular policy. So, what is the benefit that we would be getting as a company, from that policy, maybe from our subordinated products or let's say our broken rice or lesser moisture commodity or anything? So yes, that's from my side.
As far as rice is concerned, we are the third cheapest country in the world as far as non-basmati is concerned, and that is why in the year 2021 and currently we have exported around 13.1 million tons, which is a record quantity. And day by day, with MSP increasing and with our local consumption, the rice prices are going to increase. Therefore, ethanol product can only be made out of the waste. For example, out of the molasses or where there is a waste. If rice prices goes very high, for example, we make glucose also. It's a very small plant. Many a times we have to stop glucose when corn prices comes down. There is no parity in manufacturing glucose. Similarly, I believe as far as ethanol is concerned, rice particularly in North India, which is basmati well, will never be a viable commodity. That's number one. And for that,
the less revenue, I think you have not listening. I've explained previously also. The volume has increased not by 10%. It has increased by 1% only, and the value has been decreased by 11%. And that is due to COGS, the cost of goods sold. The value of the cost of goods sold has reduced by 17% over to last year. So instead of 17 years, we made a less realization of 12%. So that is the reason why it is our EBITDA is the highest and the profits are the highest.
Well noted on that front. So if we talk about packaged food, basically like India Gate and Unity, if there is an X number or X percentage change in our raw material cost, how significantly does it get passed on to the end customer?
You see our premium products, which are India Gate Classic, India Gate Select, India Gate Super, and 3-4 more SKUs. We never change the price, whatever the market is. It is somewhere when the market is very bad, we do some promotions, but our MRP remains the same, even in the export market as well as in the domestic market.
So in that case, your revenue should be more linked to your volume that you have been doing. Like you said, that 1% growth is there year on year. So your revenue must also have been grown somewhat by that, or must have stayed at par instead of declining by 10%, isn't it?
This is due to China. We have exported around 35,000 metric ton of broken rice at the rate of 20 rupees. You see the average realization where we are standing 80 rupees and 20 rupees. It has come down, no? But the cost of goods of that sold by 20 rupees, maybe my cost of goods was 15 rupees only. Not 20, 35. 20 rupees kilo. So, I mean, you can't compare all these things on a basis of because the cost of goods sold is a very important factor. We are not passing those benefits in the premium products, but then the lower segment, lower SKUs, which are mini Mogra, and which are for the poor people, yes, some benefit passes on.
Well understood. Well understood, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraint, that will be the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you very much once again for your interest and support. We will continue to stay engaged. Please be in touch with our investor relations team for any further details or discussion. Look forward to interacting with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. On behalf of KRBL Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.